hello to anyone who is lurking in the chat and or might be watching in the future. This episode of Media Musings, we're finally wrapping up Western Month after, a brief detour through Lit Month and a bunch of setbacks.
Yeah.
With a discussion on Logan, because Logan is a Western.
It may be a superhero Western, but it's a fucking Western.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe that it's a Western, go and watch it, because they do beat you over the head with the fact that this is a Western.
Even the tone in terms of coloration is Western.
And not only that, it is a fitting send off to the X-Men franchise.
Mm-hmm.
The Deadpool movies don't really count as the X-Men part of the X-Men franchise, and the other two movies that came out after Logan don't exist.
Yeah. What movies that came out after Logan?
Yeah.
Well, I always loved the fact that one of the Deadpool 2 trailers was done as a post-credit scene for Logan.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
That honestly, it tracks.
I mean, I have heard some people call this the best superhero movie ever made. Now, I don't know if I necessarily hold that opinion myself, but I don't begrudge anyone that opinion, because this is a fantastic movie. I certainly am more than happy to say this is the absolute best of the entire X-Men franchise. That all the movies made in the X-Men franchise. There's something a bit special about this one.
I will say, it got fucking snobbed. It got fucking snubbed at the Oscars.
Yeah.
This is valid. It was
it was nominated, but only for Best Adapted Screenplay.
See, I have a friend who, honestly, he watches a lot of films and shit, and Logan is the only one that's ever made him cry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost cried again, watching the end, and I knew it was coming this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sat in the cinema watching it with my girlfriend at the time. I think I was doing, and I was sat there looking like a fucking psychopath, not crying because my brain just was not in that headspace.
oh yeah, I had tears streaming down at the end.
The ending is very moving. Let's be honest about this, especially if you've watched all, if you've been watching the entire franchise and so on. That it's even more so.
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to moving moments in movies, for me, it's this is pretty much tied for the top with Superman at the end of The Iron Giant.
Yeah.
I would agree with maybe one exception. The stunning lack of romance between Deadpool and his driver. It was certainly very moving, and I understand the premise was taken from the comics, but I think this was the X-Men film I could say did its concept justice.
Yeah, and to be fair, the Old Man Logan comic is way crazier and different.
Yeah.
So
this one knew it didn't have to be true to the source material to be good.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, also like the X-Men franchise as a whole kind of had to, kind of had to diverge from the source material because, they were in their own little carved off niche of properties that Fox had access to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did have certain creative limitations.
Yeah. And, we might as well get this out of the way, but, before we get into the, discussing the movie proper. But, now that Disney has Fox and thus Marvel does have the rights to the X-Men, I think, honestly, I don't think they should bring anything over from the X-Men franchise that we got out of Fox.
No, I'm certainly of the opinion if they go with anything to do with X-Men that it should be a sort of a reboot or something.
Yeah, it should be its own. Yeah, it should be its like the MCU X-Men should be their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, though I feel like if they do, they have to be very careful how they cast, because for all the flaws of the X-Men series of films, the casting was excellent.
Yeah.
I'll just say this: do not recast. Just do not recast anyone else as Wolverine if you do reboot it. Disney.
Yeah,
just leave Wolverine be. I know
Professor X and Wolverine can't really be recast particularly easily now. I don't think.
They got away with Professor X once with James McAvoy, but you won't get away with it again.
Yeah. Though, like something I could see them possibly doing, especially since the next phase of the MCU is going into the whole multiverse concept. If they bring X-23 over into the MCU, played by the same actor.
I did want to bring that up actually, but I didn't know if now was the time that I want to see shit done with those kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only that was basically the only way I could see the X-Men franchise going forward and actually being any good. Especially since they announced a New Mutants movie. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be following the kids. No, we're not. It's that movie didn't get made. I haven't seen it because it didn't get made.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I stopped after X-Men Apocalypse and Logan, I've not seen any of the newer X-Men ones like Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'm just not bothered.
I would. It's not something I'd recommend. First Class was okay, but I think a lot of the newer ones, yeah.
Yeah, I liked First Class and Days of Future Past.
They were fun, honestly.
But after I saw the trailers and reviews for Apocalypse, I'm like,
Apocalypse was very disappointing.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that based off the trailers, Apocalypse's plot was going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting, and it didn't.
Yeah.
Although I know we said we're not really counting it as X-Men, but if there is anything Disney can bring over, it is Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, because no one else can do it now, and it is.
Yeah,
Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool playing an actor.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, I think if I remember right, and if my information is actually still up to date, Disney is going to be doing an R-rated Deadpool 3.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, I think Ryan Reynolds effectively just pushed at them and refused to do it until they agreed to an R rating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because you're not going to do a Deadpool film that's like a 12 or some shit.
and it is fitting that we did mention Deadpool, because Deadpool and Logan were basically the 1-2 punch that's like, yeah, an R-rated superhero movie can work.
Yeah.
Because, Deadpool was your R-rated comedy superhero movie, and Logan was the R-rated serious superhero movie. And another thing that really makes Logan stand out from a lot of, especially a lot of the post MCU superhero movies, is it doesn't go out of its way to either be it doesn't go out of its way to try and be an MCU movie, and it doesn't go out of its way to try to be the opposite of an MCU movie. It's just take away the claws. Take away the claws and powers, and it's just the story of an old man connecting with the daughter he never had, or the daughter he never thought he had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With obviously a lot of classic Western sort of tropes thrown into this as well.
Yeah, and with the senile granddad who they are dragging along with them.
Yeah. And it is like a dark superhero movie, but it's not a dark superhero movie in the way most dark superhero movies are.
It's not Zack Snyder, let's put it that way, is it?
Yeah,
it's not being dark for the sake of being dark.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not your edgelord's dark superhero movie. It's dark because you really feel how bleak this world has gotten, and you just feel the weight of years on both Logan and Charles.
And I think the threat that X-24 posed as well.
Oh. Yeah.
Like, I feel like we probably are going to bring X-24 up later, but the additional threat of someone who's as good as, potentially better than Logan at what he does.
Well, and I you know what? Let screw it. I mean, we might actually go into a plot synopsis, but might as well talk about this thematically. So, because I really like X-24 works on two separate levels. First, like you said, X-24 works as a plausible, nemesis or a plausible threat to Logan. Or a plausible, overwhelming threat to Logan. Because in his current state, most things are a plausible threat.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
yeah, I mean, this is the thing with this movie. This is not the Logan of the movie's past.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a force of nature sort of thing. This is it's very, even early on in this film, it's very much, you get the impression that this is a Logan who is sick, probably dying, and is not the force he once was.
Yeah, whose healing factor is slowing down due to a combination of just age and adamantium poisoning.
Yeah.
But the other way X-24 really works is on the metatextual level. because you have Logan, fighting against the picture everyone has of how Wolverine, how most fans, or the more annoying fans have of how Wolverine should be. We have Logan the character combating the primal, essentially the avatar of primal bloodlust that most people think is the only way you can depict Wolverine.
Yeah, I think that certain level of craftiness is.
Yeah, he doesn't. He obviously, it's not just the fact that he's a physical threat to Logan. That he's lacks X-24 just lacks Logan's humanity. Altogether,
I think that X-24 and Logan as a pair, if you take it into context of the whole franchise, there is actually a really fun comparison as to how these two characters are portrayed together.
Yeah.
In contrast to how Wolverine as his own character is portrayed in the other films.
Yeah.
And that might be reading too much into it. Equally, it's a fun parallel that exists, whether it was intentional or not.
And pulling from the comics, part of what made Wolverine a compelling character is the fact that he was fighting against the darker, more berserker, more primal emotions within him to try and, be a functioning member of, the, superhuman community at large.
Yeah.
And so, and once again, on another level, you have that, on the screen, because X-24 is just that feral killing instinct. It's basically Wolverine with all of his humanity stripped away.
Yeah.
Yeah, the worst parts of Wolverine that he fights in the comics is X-24, and that's almost been, stripped through age from Logan as a character.
Yeah. But do we want to go through the plot, or go through a plot now that we've talked about X-24, or do we want to kind of go thematically?
Whichever way you want to play it. I mean, there's obviously plot points we need to on, but,
I feel like if we kind of discuss thematic stuff first and then went into plot, that might.
Yeah. Because I mean, we've discussed the thematics of X-24. Okay, yeah, okay. So, but in the way that X-24 is also, a kind of, anti-Logan, essentially, or the Hyde to Logan's Jekyll. We also have another counterpoint to Logan, who is, Laura Kinney, X-23, and is basically the movie is Logan, bonding with her and then finally passing the torch on to her.
Yeah.
Is you can be, the be better than me. So while we have, X-24 is something of like the past, the constructed weapon, for the US government, and we have X-23 as a hopefully brighter future coming out of the taking out from the Turner thesis, the closing of the mutant frontier.
Yeah. But yeah, because I mean, obviously there is quite a character arc in this. There is sort of a character arc of Laura throughout this movie. That I mean, when you really sort of first see her, it is just this for a good part. The bit you do see of her is the kind of primal rage that you see from Logan, when she feels threatened. You sort of see that in a lot initially with her, and obviously because for a good part of the film she doesn't talk, and then you realise that not only because she talks, she's bilingual, but I think it takes a little while to get a grasp on her character because of that reason. But she obviously does communicate with Charles.
Yeah.
Who is able to reach through to her.
Well, and it like you get the feeling that a lot of her character arc is her learning how to be her own person.
Yeah.
Because she and the other mutants didn't have anything resembling a childhood. They were test tube babies raised in a facility to be weapons.
Yeah. And I mean, you see this with Laura, and because she does not. There's a lot about the outside world she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And it's like a whole number of times when she, I mean, there's a couple of times, isn't it, where she's about to essentially kill someone because that's what's natural, and Logan's like, no, not good, bad, bad behavior,
and
you get the feeling that's the first time anyone sort of, with the exception of the obviously the nurse who broke them out, it's probably been not anyone who's been like that with her.
Yeah. So, in the way that X-23 is, Logan stripped of humanity, or X-24 is Logan stripped of his humanity. X-23, Laura, is, Wolverine with a lot of the same, trauma, being experimented on and constructed as a weapon, but still retaining that basic humanity that grows and flourishes over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
She also has, like you mentioned, because she has a lot of the same trauma, I think it works very well in terms of Logan never had anybody. She had him, even if only for a few days.
Yeah.
Well, you could say obviously eventually Logan he had Charles and he had the X-Men eventually, but for a long period of his life, we know Logan was very much a loner.
Yeah. So
yeah, and
I will say it is kind of ironic that the characters who are always loner characters tend to end up on all the teams.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
It's just because narratively it's easy to go, oh, they just fucked off.
Yeah. Okay, we need to get a team to work together, but we don't want to make it too easy. let's have at least a couple of them in there who are naturally inclined to be loners.
Well,
You know?
well, I mean, it's more like, and the same thing is, with the Hulk is Logan and the Hulk are both really popular characters. So whenever someone makes a new team book,
those characters go in.
Yeah,
naturally.
Because Logan's been in Alpha Flight, he's been in the X-Men, he's been in the Avengers multiple times.
Yeah, it is. See, that sort of stuff always reminds me of like when you have a bunch of variations on the same character in comics. Because you have like Team Thor, which I almost feel like bits of Logan tried to reference a bit.
Okay, I've got a whole list here of Wolverine's team affiliations: X-Men, the Canadian Army, OSS/CIA, the Avengers, Avengers Utility Squad, Alpha Flight, the New Avengers, the New Fantastic Four, Salvage Avengers, Weapon X, X-Force. So yeah, he's been on a lot of teams for a loader, isn't he, really?
Yeah. Though, arguably, being in Weapon X wasn't exactly a choice of his.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Yeah. Like, I'm a loner until anyone needs a help ever.
Yeah.
I feel like with Wolverine, that is sort of fitting.
Yeah.
And like that does show up even in previous films with Rogue, but then here with Charles and with Laura, it's like, oh, a person needs our help. Fuck it, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah. And, he, like, even, with the years, he's gotten better at the pretending I don't care, but even when they hit, E10, he turns the money. He's like, no, you need the money more than me.
I'm going to say this because I know this is more of perhaps a plot point than a theme point, but something I definitely noticed with the whole now we've gone on to this about him being a kind of reluctant hero. I don't really care. Here we get some Mexicans coming to a lot of a reluctant American hero begging for help. We got our first classic Western trope here, folks. It's like I'm thinking, Magnificent Seven, straight away. There's a whole number of them. Once Upon a Time in the West, those sort, So it's our first little Western trope.
And I mean, arguably, you can tell, you can say that arguably that trope is a bit problematic.
a little.
Yeah, I feel like it's a trope that's problematic, but is specifically played to like. There's a reason it keeps coming up.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say there.
Though, I'll say it now, but I'll definitely probably say it again whenever we actually talk about the Magnificent Seven. Now, I haven't seen the remake. I will say this. This is based off of what I saw from the trailers. But somehow they took the problematic bit, the problematic pseudo white, white man's burden, white savior complex bit from the original Magnificent Seven, and then made it worse. Even though the lead cast was more diverse, the movie as a whole was whiter.
Yeah, but it is a very much a classic. It is a bit of a trope, isn't it? With like the sort of like not just the Magnificent Seven, but like I said, Once Upon a Time in the West is a little got that, and there's a few other. I mean, and okay, yes, I know it's somewhat of a parody of Magnificent Seven. if anyone's seen the film movie Three Amigos, it just almost parodies that completely. The whole.
And hey, Julie.
Julie.
But well, yeah. What? So brief tangent. It looks like when they remade the Magnificent Seven, like I said, I haven't actually seen the remake. This is basically information I gathered from the trailers. It looks like instead of having the heroes being hired by a Mexican village to ward off, other Mexican bandits, they're hired by a white town to fend off Mexican bandits.
Yeah.
That's not worse at all.
Yeah. Like I said, even though the lead cast is more diverse, the movie as a whole is whiter and more problematic because of it.
Yeah, I'm having this little image in my head of certain, should we say, certain right wingers complaining about how culture's gotten more woke nowadays since the old days.
Yeah,
it's like maybe not as much as you think.
Maybe not as much as we'd fucking hope.
Yeah. So, anyways, back to Logan. Now, since we have kind of briefly mentioned, the journey to Dakota or North Dakota, I'm hence my Black Hills, South Dakota shirt. It's the closest thing I could get to something topical. But, is the commentary on the X-Men franchise's loose relationship with the source material. Where, we have, where in the movie, Logan's openly scoffs at the X-Men comic books, of all the things shown in here, only a quarter of it actually happened, and not like that.
Which I know that was something, I know a lot of people, that was something that did irritate a lot of people about this movie. I actually enjoyed that whole element of them adding the fact that there's been comics and stories written about the X-Men's exploits even within that universe.
I found
that quite interesting.
I also think that it adds credence to the lack of timeline, the fact that those comics can exist.
Yeah. And but also but it takes that open scorn, Laura's believing in fairy tales, like her like the nurse read too many comic books and now we're chasing a
pipe dream.
We're chasing a pipe dream, and turns it on its head. Because you learn that they weren't chasing a pipe dream. They were using the comic books as code, essentially. Because we did see the nurses attempting to humanize the mutants in the facility as they were being raised. But I get the sense that the X-Men comics were allowed as a bit of like one like they like I have a feeling that the people who ran the facility allowed the X-Men comics in as something of a way to indoctrinate them. You know, it's like, oh, you're gonna be heroes like, you know, like the X-Men.
Yeah.
And then of course the nurses turned that on its head and used it as their code for their escape plan.
Yeah.
You know, which I feel is a really interesting commentary on how we interact with media, you know, media at large, and given that it's a comic book movie commentating on on comics instead of just, you know, commentating on comic book movies like, you know, Deadpool did.
I think that something that this is one of those, it was not explicitly there, but I feel like if it was to be explored, it would exist, is that the way the nurse did set up the stuff with Eden is very reminiscent of how actual revolutions happen.
Yeah. Or also like the Underground Railroad.
That'd be a better example. Yeah.
Yeah, where, you know, directions on how to safely get to Canada were snuck into, you know, spirituals amongst the slaves.
Yeah.
By spirituals I mean the songs.
The songs and because I mean that's a well documented thing within the slave culture of songs being, you know, hidden messages being in songs.
Yeah. Or like how the British
which again, remember people, you know, what period of time was the Underground Railroad? It would be in the time period where a lot of westerns were set. So just to remind people, Logan is a western.
Usually in the time period immediately before a lot of westerns were set, because a lot of westerns are post post Civil War.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because how else are you going to romanticize the lost cause of the Confederacy after, you know? Otherwise, you know.
Yeah.
You know. Right. We won't go down. Actually, no, let's not go down.
Well, I mean, you know, you could make a KKK propaganda film and get it shown in the White House. Fuck you, Wilson.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Only thing I know the movie you're on about, but the only thing I'll say about it, for the time, the cinematography was very groundbreaking. But that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, it's a technical.
It's a technical masterpiece. But
it's a technical masterpiece, and it does deserve a place in the history of cinema. But that place should also come with a big, heavy asterisk acknowledging the fact that it's KKK propaganda.
Yes. Yeah.
But I was going to say another example would be like how the British would sneak escape kits into board games that were being sent in morale packs to prisoner of war camps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you can sneak it in there, you do.
Yeah.
And I think even because we've mentioned a few times it being like a more Western themed film, I think even from the scene in the car park right at the start, that's the tone it has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, because it is some, because I know people sort of sometimes say, how do you come, how is this a Western movie? And the fact of that is, if you really watch this movie, it kind of beats you over the head at the fact that this is a Western. If you watch this movie,
Honestly,
especially,
it narrowly avoids the fucking sepia colors for it as well.
Yeah.
especially one of the movies that I know I suggested is something it didn't quite make the cut for Western Month,
Yeah.
but Shane, is referenced heavily throughout this movie.
Well, I mean, and the speech from the end of Shane is given as Logan's
Obituary.
eulogy.
Yeah.
Which really fits Logan as a character because he's, he is the gunslinger.
Mm.
He's the man who's seen
Yeah.
so much violence that the only good he can do is through violence.
Mm. I mean, when I was looking through like influences for this movie, obviously we've mentioned Shane, the Cowboys is mentioned, the John Wayne movie, Unforgiven. These are all like things that are cited by the director as being influences in the making of this movie.
And there's even the B plot halfway through the movie with the family who's fighting the big company that's bought up all the land in the area and it's trying to cut off their water to force them out.
Yeah. Well, this is you could argue this is a theme. I mean, there's a subplot there. You can argue this is kind of a running theme to a degree throughout this movie with we've had a lot of westerns that have had the whole thing of the dying last days of the West kind of thing, and technologies kind of coming in. That element exists in this movie.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, like I said, the end of the mutant frontier.
Mm. Yeah.
Or as the doctor says near, the evil doctor character says, we snuck genetic therapy into their food and drinks, and random mutantism went the way of polio.
Yeah.
And well, the thing is, they're not ending the frontier, they're taming it.
Yeah.
Or controlling it.
Yeah, I mean, well, they are taming it and controlling it now, because now it's not the whole thing that it's not. They have decided they're not eradicating mutants altogether, but they have decided we are going to have mutants, but they're going to be mutants we control. They're going to be our mutants.
Now, see,
the thing with the children.
I don't know that this was intentional, but I feel like you can probably use themes in Logan as a bit of a demonstration of like arguments against both capitalism and authoritarianism.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Like it's obvious and blatantly there, but I don't know how much that's intended to be there, especially given it was kind of made by a big company.
Yeah. Which is kind of ironic, seeing as how Logan is the last film in a smaller superhero franchise before the studio that produced it was bought up by the corporate giant. Once again, Deadpool doesn't technically count as part of the franchise, and there were no other movies after Logan.
Yes. Deadpool doesn't count. Deadpool films are Deadpool films.
Yes.
I also really like how they referenced Logan in, like, talking it through Deadpool stuff.
Yeah.
And the little character of Logan on a spike.
Oh yeah, the little music box that was Logan's death scene.
Yeah. I feel like that meta rivalry that doesn't really exist, but you can see it between Logan and Deadpool, carries over to the films excellently.
Yeah, the whole two slicey dicey guys that heal.
Yeah. And one of them is a grumpy wild man, and the other is fuck it.
Yeah.
I feel that there's also something. How do words?
Yeah. Words are things, are they?
What are words? Can I eat them? I think that with Logan, like, I've also noticed a lot of the things we have to say about Logan are praise, and I feel like by and large with movies I love, I tend to be then critical of them.
Yeah.
But Logan, besides a few stylistic things, by and large I don't have that many critiques of.
Yeah. Because, well, and also I'm kind of the same way, because I can see, like, I can see how badly they could have gone with an R-rated Logan movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we know the terror that was X-Men Origins Wolverine.
What's that? I've never heard of that film.
Well, see, the reason I actually acknowledge X-Men Origins Wolverine was the first 20 minutes were actually pretty good.
Honestly, I'll give you that. I don't mind the film itself if you're willing to shut your brain off.
Yeah.
Which honestly is kind of what I have to do for all of the X-Men films, because of so much of the pseudoscience glaring you in the face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's,
It's like scenes where Tony Stark talks about tech. I shut my brain off because otherwise it will draw me out of the story.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it's, it's a franchise about, genetic mutations turning people into wizards. Very, very specific wizards.
This is true.
But wizards nonetheless.
I'll be completely honest, every single X-Men film feels like a separate D&D campaign.
I can see that.
And Logan is your Western themed, but someone wanted to play a barbarian and someone wanted to play a technomancer.
Yeah. And I like also like another thing is, because like I said, I could, like, there's a, it's kind of hard to criticize Logan, because, like, the obvious way to go with an R-rated Wolverine movie is like a killing spree blood fest, but instead they went with a quiet, contemplative road trip Western drama.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the way they started, if you look at how they started to do it with the Western style,
yeah,
there's not that much fluff.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the things that are in there, they kind of either have to have in there or it's a reference.
Well, and for the most part, like, even the background chatter from, like, you know, the radio or news broadcasts in the background is stuff that lets you piece together the plot before it gets spelled out for you at the end.
Yes, they do foreshadowing excellently in a way that a lot of films don't.
You know, because from the background chatter, we learn that, you know, there haven't been any mutants for a while. We see the ad for the Kangaroo Corn Company with their genetically modified corn, and then we see the fucking massive cornfields that they're driving through with the automated trucks and everything. So by the time it all gets spelled out, you know, blatantly to you, you've pretty much already pieced everything together. You know, if you're paying attention.
Yeah. I do like that if you do pay attention, it rewards you, but you don't have to.
Yeah. And that's just a hallmark of good story writing, of good storytelling right there. Is it gets you stuff to piece together, but then it tells you,
I also like
that
how
you were right.
I also like how, despite there being a very clearly defined like structure and plots, it doesn't beat you over the head with some sort of moral of the story.
Yeah. Well, that's because it's essentially it's thematically tying the final bow on the X-Men franchise, which is why it's so fitting as the final movie. Once again, Deadpool doesn't count, and there weren't any other movies after.
The Deadpool films exist in a pocket universe.
Yeah. Yeah, Deadpool is its own franchise, and there weren't any other X-Men movies. What are you talking about?
Logan was the last X-Men film. You know how people go through and be like, okay, so watch these Star Wars films, but ignore these ones? I feel like we could do that with the X-Men and be like, okay, so watch these, watch the first 20 minutes of this one, and watch them in this order.
Yeah.
I'm going to invoke the bad-tempered badger rule about things being non-canon with X-Men movies made after Logan.
Yes, the rule of Badger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the rule of
Badger's law.
Badger's law.
Yes.
Also, I had an interesting thought about how Logan and Laura can resist, the mental assaults in the movie, or and it was shown, I think, earlier in the franchise as well, that Logan can kind of just power past like telepathic assaults. But so the idea is it has nothing to do with the healing factor. It's the fact that their skull, that their brains are basically encased in adamantium.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a lesser version of Magneto's helmet.
Yeah, like, this protects me.
Yeah. Which would explain how, Xavier could be contained by having him hold up in this old, water tower, essentially as an anti-Cerebro.
I definitely, I think we could. I think we definitely ought to talk about Xavier in Charles Xavier in this movie, and seeing what's happened to him. Which again, that's if you've been a big fan of the franchise as well, it's kind of sad in a way seeing what had happened to Xavier. Now, from what I gather in the storyline purposes, he is like supposedly around 90 years old in this movie.
Yeah. It's an emotional punch in the gut. A thematically appropriate punch in the gut, perhaps, but it's a punch in the gut.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. And to sort of seeing Charles in this. He obviously has some. It isn't. We don't know what the illness is, but there is some illness with his brain. We don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing was, it's like at one time with this Logan's kind of aim was to buy, get enough money to go buy this boat, and then he and Charles would go and live out their last years together on sea on some fucking Gin Palace Sunseeker boat or something. But sorry, Gin Palace is a sort of little slang term we use. People in Salem use for boats like that, so just so people know.
Yeah, basically, their idea is try and get the boat so they can live the rest of their days where they're far enough away from people that Charles's brain won't accidentally kill anyone.
Julie makes a good point in the chat there about this. It is like Logan caring for. I mean, Charles is definitely, without a doubt, is the closest thing Logan's had to a father figure. And one of the few people that Logan has truly cares about in his life is Charles. And obviously, it's been established throughout the films that the X-Men became Logan's family.
Yeah.
And even though he is traditionally a loner, the X-Men and Charles, not only was like the linchpin of that family, Charles is the only family he's got left at this point in the movie as well.
Especially
since of the movie.
Especially since it's like heavily implied and like straight up stated that Charles accidentally killed all the other X-Men with a seizure.
Yeah. And it's a sad thing where, obviously we get to the point, I think this is right before Charles's death, when he kind of had that realization of what he did and the guilt he feels over it, even though it really wasn't his fault. It's not something he did intentionally, obviously, but the pain and the guilt of that, and it is quite sad.
Especially when he makes that, when he has that realization and makes that confession, not to Logan, but to
X-24.
But to X-24.
Logan, but it's X-24. And when we're watching in the film, we think that it's Logan he's talking to, and then we don't know and we realize it's X-24. Which is quite.
Yeah, I feel like the way Charles was treated was very much to enhance Logan and Laura, but not only to enhance them. Like, it did try and finish his arc in some meaningful way.
And I think in a way it's a lot like, it's not just, this isn't just Logan's last ride. This is Charles's last ride as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he's devoted his life to helping mutants. This is the thing that Charles is above anything else. You could say is devoted his, but helping humanity really. That's what
And
Charles is. You could say
with Laura showing up,
Mm.
he has that. It seems that he has that purpose again.
Yeah, it's his last. It's his last chance to, do that again to help someone, and because I mean that is essentially what Xavier has spent his life doing. And obviously you can. I mean, like you can argue with even some of the other characters. Like you can maybe make the argument that Magneto has also spent his life devoted to helping mutants. Just that
that's why
his vision of helping mutants and Charles's vision is very, very different.
I think that's part of the beauty of Magneto and Professor X is that they want the same thing. Like objectively, they are on the same side. They just disagree so strongly on how to get there that they end up enemies.
Yeah.
Magneto was right.
Yeah, Charles was an idealist, and Magneto was absolutely correct about that.
Yeah,
you get the feeling. Yeah, you do get the feeling that Magneto is a bit more of a realist than Charles, and Charles is an idealist. But
I think Magneto's more of a pessimist than a realist. I think they represent extremes.
Yeah.
I'm saying realist because I'm a bit of a fucking pessimist, I think.
See, I'll be honest, I think both of them are extremes in the same way the Jedi and Sith are both unhealthy extremes. But Charles tries to go about it in a healthy and understanding manner and allows the other X-Men room to have a healthy view on it.
Yeah. So, arguably, I'm not okay. So, given the context that originally the X-Men were a civil rights allegory.
Yeah.
And please nobody clip this. Because this statement needs the context of the X-Men being an allegory. The X-Men are kind of Uncle Toms.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if we're going to talk allegories in a sense, I mean, really, you see, the X-Men are kind of embody the sort of civil rights move, the struggle for civil rights embodied by somebody like Martin Luther King.
Well, yeah,
and
that's,
you could say Magneto represents.
That's the way. That's the way it's written to be. But if you look at it, but if you look at it from the actual, the actual narrative, the X-Men go and beat up mutants who are getting too uppity.
Yeah. Yeah, I see where you're. I see where you're coming from, Ring. Okay.
See,
as we said, people context.
Yeah,
context.
But
see, I don't know that this ever did happen because I don't follow the comics well enough to know if I've just missed it.
Yeah.
But I think what would have been really interesting would have been if there was a point in the comics where some of the Brotherhood and some of the X-Men ended up working together to try and find a balance.
Now there have been times when, Brotherhood members, were on the X-Men and vice versa, I think. But I don't think they've ever really banded together except against like a bigger existential threat.
Yeah, I mean, they may have banded together against threats like, say, Sentinels or whoever from time to time.
Or, Apocalypse.
But, yeah, I mean, but it's like I said, they're essentially, I mean, they are, at their core. The X-Men are, it is an allegory for the civil rights movement in a sense that, you've got, you've probably got the X-Men maybe embody the civil rights movement, the sort of Martin Luther King kind, and whereas the Brotherhood are more, the Black Panther Party or something like that. And I know that's not. People again don't clip that because I know there's a lot of misunderstandings about the Black Panther Party. And listen, I've got a signed book by David Hilliard here. I've read this shit, so don't come at me. But that's kind of what Marvel was going for with this.
Yeah. So also you can say, at least in the 60s, like before the Claremont era, or even into the early Claremont era, Magneto was actually the more ethical of the two, because he actually kept to the Geneva Conventions. He only like in the first X-Men comic, he attacks a military base. He doesn't attack a civilian center. He takes over a military base as a show of power to, essentially as a demonstration of power. And then, later when they take over a country, they do it bloodlessly.
Yeah.
So,
I think
meanwhile,
yeah,
but we've gotten on a bit of a tangent.
We have got off, but I'm going to say though, it's an acceptable tangent, because I think I know we've talked about a lot of comic book movies and comic books before on this show, but I don't think we've ever had an actual deep dive into X-Men as a comic and its themes before. So it's a worthwhile tangent to go on, I think.
Something that might bring it right round that I wanted to mention was, I do actually have, one of my few gripes with this film is the lack of Magneto. Even a reference to he had been trying to make a peace treaty with Charles when he had his seizure or some shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but the question is, where would that be put?
Yeah,
I can see why it didn't get included. I equally would have liked something, even if it was a news thing in the background, 20 years since Magneto's death or some shit. I just would have liked something.
Yeah, and you can't forget, Magneto was on the receiving end of genocide as a child.
Yeah.
He saw it coming and told Xavier that it's happening again. And it did happen in Logan.
He wasn't wrong.
Yeah. Because at this point, they made a cure and distributed it through the food and water to make mutants stop, mutating in puberty. And were thus making their own army of test tube mutants that were then patented and property, kind of. I don't know. That's kind of on the how legally would that actually work out? Though that could be why, Canada grants the New Mutants asylum. Now,
I think that something interesting is, and they didn't explore this, but legalities falling behind what's actually happening is obviously a super fucking common problem. We don't have legislation in place for new technologies and new environments we're exploring.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they didn't go this angle, but equally that angle would kind of fit, I think, of we don't have legal shit for this when you really think about it.
Yep. And Julie has another good point. It's like the government chemically castrated the mutants.
Yeah.
Though,
It's effectively is what had happened to the.
though
them.
I mean, it is kind of up in the air as to whether or not it was the government or big corporations.
Yeah.
I mean, either it's anti-authoritarianism or anti-late-stage capitalism. In kind of that view.
Again, it's yeah, we talked about this with tropes of with westerns of being, like the the sort of old gunslinger here coming back is forced back into his old ways, because essentially to defend people from like big evil corporate entities or so on,
Or heck, the oaky asshole,
yeah,
from the corn company, straight up says, "I am the law here."
yeah. I mean, there was a TV series in the 80s that was the theme of every single episode of it. It was called the A-Team.
Yeah.
That was the sole theme of every single episode of that, and they kept that going for 6 or 7 years. You know.
But you know what? Actually, there is a good argument for saying that it's not that while it may be unofficially, being done on behalf of the government, it's not officially sanctioned by the government. Because the alkali the alkali facility isn't in the US. It's in Mexico.
Yeah. As Julie says, Julie says, look when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
I ain't getting on no plane, sucker. Sorry, had to get it in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think one of the things, because I mean, I'm just looking through this. I'm obviously looking through the page now.
Yeah.
And I think there's not like an awful lot of the characters in this
Julie,
movie.
actually what you mean is we don't talk about our war crimes. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah. But we don't have a lot of characters in this that we have any deep dives into in this. You've really got the main maybe a half a dozen main characters, you'd say, in this movie, which would be with the three we've really kind of talked about, which is Logan, Charles, Laura. And you've probably got, so should say, Pierce, Caliban, and Dr. Rice, which even he's not much really gotten into his motivations or whatever as a character, other than he is the evil scientist behind this, and even got the wonderful Richard E. Grant to play him.
And I know we say and I know we say Deadpool is its own franchise, but you can actually kind of see a progression from the plots in the plot in Deadpool, and even kind of the subplot in Deadpool 2 contributing into Logan. Because in in Deadpool, they're taking people, forcing them to express an X gene, and then and then selling those people off to the highest bidder.
Mm.
And in Logan, that's basically the same thing, only they're making the people instead of, they're engineering test tube soldiers.
Yeah.
It's been a hot minute since I've actually seen Logan, so I forget if they addressed this. But do they address that they could make more clones of X-23 using the same DNA they grew X-23 from?
I don't think it was addressed off the top. And I did watch this movie again this morning, but I don't recall that being addressed.
Well, I think. Well, so I think the idea. Well, I don't. So I don't. I think the main issue why they're after X-23 isn't because they want to use her, because they already have X-24. It's that they're cleaning up they're cleaning up the mess.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a cleanup operation. I just feel like the way
if we can't have them, no one can kind of
also
thing.
Also, it is kind of addressed, but like most of how Logan is, it's done kind of in the background. Because when Dr. Rice is going through that that like triage center after after the X-24 rampage, he points to Caliban and says, save tissue samples from that one. He was a good tracker and had a high IQ.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think more my thought in bringing it up was less they didn't need to track her, and more I feel like that isn't acknowledged in the ending, that they could just make more of her to hunt her.
I mean, I definitely
arguably
again,
that sounds more like something that should have been explored in a sequel.
I can see that actually, yeah.
I'm gonna say
because that sounds something more that it'd be part of Laura's story than part of Logan's story, and the movie's called Logan after all.
I'm gonna say you mentioned a minute ago, we haven't really talked about him yet, but Caliban in this I mean, Stephen Merchant, I think, was really good as well as Caliban in this movie. But he was a bit of a tragic figure in this movie a little bit. That he was very much forced in. It was very much ended up forced into essentially working for the bad guys and then sacrificing himself at the end. I thought Caliban was quite a tragic figure in this, because you got the feeling that it's like, even with and it is pointed out that in the movie that like Logan's whole plan to go and like live on the sea with Charles, well, it doesn't involve Caliban, who's sat there with them in the same sort of predicament and helping them out. It's quite sad. His story arc, I think, is quite sad.
Yeah, I feel like Caliban very much. His character was treated as a series of tropes more than a character in some ways. which I understand why they did, because the film was very packed to say that I think they should have characterized certain characters more.
Yeah,
I do equally think they didn't do the character of Caliban justice.
Yeah, I do like the fact Julie's put in there. Yes, love a good Shakespeare reference with. That's one of the Shakespeare books I had to read in school was The Tempest. So yeah.
We did that in like year 8. That was fun.
Yeah. Actually, there's actually a very fantastic comedy show from back in the early 2000s called it's by Rob Newman. It's called From Caliban to Taliban: 500 Years of Humanitarian Intervention. Very good show. So watch that. Do watch that if you have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Whenever I hear the name Caliban, I'm always like, ooh, references.
Yeah. Also, I think he's based off like one of the Morlocks. No, like I know the name is originally a.
So he actually was originally a member of the Morlocks in was it? Oh gods. Because I'm not even going to try and remember the issue number because I will fuck that up. But it was the Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah. Yeah, number 148, and the only reason I know that is because I was double checking.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also think that the whole Caliban as a character, his story, the fact that his story is so bleak, almost feels thematically fitting, even if I take issue with some of the ways it was done.
Yeah. Where he, helped, where we learned that he helped bring about the end of the mutants by, tracking them down for Alkali. And then is roped into one last job. But has something of a heroic self-sacrifice / revenge.
Yeah, like he sort of has a redemption arc.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's working on his redemption, and then he's tortured into his last job. Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Logan is one of those films that we focus on like 4 or 5 characters, but there's like a billion interesting side characters.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like there's the family where you like see just enough of them to get attached, and then they're all murdered by X-24. Which which once again reinforces the bleak atmosphere of the movie everyone Logan cares about dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite a that's quite a little moving moment in the movie when he says that between him and Laura. It is that whole moment that you get in a lot of films where she's put some hope in him, and then it's lost for a moment, where he says, "Everyone I care about dies, kid." and she says, "I've got nothing to worry about." Then,
Yeah,
which is
that's kind of a knife twister right there.
Yeah, that is, and it's, and the weird thing is, in a weird way, is Logan saying about that, "Get away from me, everyone I get close," is in a weird way like an almost a backhanded way of admitting that he does care about her, but doesn't really want to admit it.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion steeped in there that he's clearly trying to process.
Yeah.
So I say this in a more light-hearted manner, but every single character in this fucking film needs therapy.
Yes.
Massively.
I'm not sure about I mean, I'm not sure about Charles, because Charles's problem isn't really something that can be fixed with therapy.
Well, presently.
Yeah. Like as of the the situation in Logan, like there's no fixing what Charles is going through.
Yeah. Like Charles is the one character that I think would not have benefited from therapy. Though I'll be completely honest, I think that he's not the only character whose therapist is probably thankful that they weren't actually the person's therapist.
Yeah.
Because I feel like quite a few of the characters, if the therapist said something to piss them off, would just be like, knife.
Yeah. Just flaw.
Especially X-24.
Yeah.
I'm now just imagining X-24 in therapy.
Well, the thing is, like, X-24 isn't even really a person. Like, emotionally speaking, he's just a robot.
As I said, I mean, X-24, in a way, is a character that doesn't have any humanity. It does not have. He's Logan with. He's Logan minus the humanity, and he's just kind of the rage monster in this, in a certain way.
I think that's the way he's written, but if you consider post that, there is a significant amount of me that does wonder, like, at what point, because obviously people tend to dehumanize X-24. If he went out into the real world and was not murdery for a bit, at what point do people rehumanize him?
Unfortunately, we never quite got to find that out.
Yeah.
This is me going off into the rabbit hole that is the philosophy of personhood.
And it is kind of the thing of, hypothetically, if there's a reality where he survived having an adamantium bullet put right into his head at point blank range.
Not only an adamantium bullet, but an adamantium hollow point.
Yeah, I mean, which, hey, if you're not seeing it, it's quite graphic. This properly blows his head off,
Yeah. Well, maybe he was improved upon like Deadpool, and he can just like, fuck it, I have a red blood cell left. It doesn't matter that there's no DNA in that.
Yeah.
What if X-24 survived?
That'd be its own fucking plot.
Yeah.
I kind of dread to feel that the like kink factor Deadpool would get out of X-24 if X-24 survived. Anyway.
Though I technically, in a way, this is X-24 is the first it is the first adaptation of another Marvel character, one that I'm pretty sure Fox actually doesn't have the rights to. Because when you think about it, X-24 is a mobile organism designed only for killing.
Oh dear.
Nerd humor. Yes. Thank you. I'm here till Thursday.
Where are you going on Thursday?
I don't know. I'm just here till Thursday.
I'll be honest, I was kind of worried about Logan going into it because of the lack of timeline every other X-Men film has displayed.
Yeah.
But I think it was at least, like, it picked a lane and stuck in it.
Yeah. And, I mean, though I do have to make a slight correction for you. Is lack of timeline. Every X-Men after Last Stand has had.
True, though I do question some of the timeline in Last Stand even.
Yeah. But, you know, everyone... It's funny because, like, Fox like, went out of its way to try and pretend Last Stand never happened, and then didn't make any movies after Logan, Badger's Law.
Yep. There is definitely a... I think that there's maybe my view of Logan was coloured by the fact that I really didn't expect much of it, and then it just completely knocked that out of the park.
Yeah. Honestly, it should have gotten at least you know, a nomination for best picture, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
What actually did get Best Picture that year? I should Google this now.
Well, I mean, it wasn't even nominated.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. So, it was The Shape of Water, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Get Out, The Post, Call Me By Your Name, and Lady Bird.
So when I've Googled, because Logan was 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah, it came out in 2017, so it would have been in the rotation for the 2018 Oscars.
Best, yeah. Just wanted to double check that I hadn't messed that up in my head and wasn't looking at the wrong year.
And Shape of Water won.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could have cut out like one of the World War II movies for Logan.
Yeah. I feel like Logan, at least amongst the people who I've kind of spoken to about it, it always is viewed as the good X-Men film, like almost universally.
Yeah.
And I find it's very rare that I find that, because I have a bunch of petulant bastards that I'm friends with.
Well, I mean, there are other good X-Men films, like, Future Past was good.
Yeah, I think First Class was good.
Yeah, First Class was
but
good. X-Men
this-
2 was good. Could have used a little more Nightcrawler, or they could have done Nightcrawler better, but it was good.
Yeah.
But Logan was great.
Yeah, this is a good X-Men film, and this is the good X-Men film.
It's like, this is the X-Men film that you need to watch.
Yeah. The other thing I think is, for me as well, is that Logan is a film I could show someone who has never seen an X-Men film, so long as they're tangentially aware of who the characters are.
Yeah. Especially especially the fact that it takes place so far outside the timeline that it is really its own movie.
Very much so.
Yeah, like, it's simultaneously its own movie while being the the final bow on the franchise, while leaving room for other potential
Yeah.
future films.
It didn't unturn every stone, but it unturned the important ones.
Yeah. Like, we even got a resolution, not a happy resolution, but a resolution to the Cure storyline from Last Stand. And it it was an ending to the old guard with room for a new guard to do their thing.
Yeah. And I think as well that it left a lot of doors open without shoving a sequel hook down your throat to say that this is definitely happening as well, which from a creative point of view is useful, at least.
Yeah. But, the mouse won out, and now whatever X-Men will get will be through the MCU. Whenever that ends up happening.
See, can you imagine if the Avengers just kind of adopted Nightcrawler?
Yeah.
That'd speed things up considerably.
Yeah. Yeah, just Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
Nightcrawler grabs Loki, teleports him like 100 feet up.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, I have to say, I mean, if as I said near the beginning of this one, I don't begrudge anyone who has this opinion that Logan is the greatest superhero movie ever made. I don't know necessarily that I hold that opinion, because I can make a case for The Dark Knight, I can make a case for a couple others, but I certainly can't begrudge anyone that opinion on Logan, because this is a brilliant movie.
Yeah, it's among the greatest superhero movies made, and it is definitely the greatest X-Men movie made.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I wanted to make a little thing again on the whole. Like we said, we talk about the trope, a lot of things that are borrowed from classic westerns, and I think, and I think the ending of it, one of the influences that is mentioned is the John Wayne movie, The Cowboys. Do you see a little element of that with the ending of this?
I'm not familiar with The Cowboys. So
well, The Cowboys is, to put it loosely, it's one of the few movies where John Wayne gets killed off by the bad guys. Now, and he's a guy leading a cattle drive, and literally the Cowboys means literally boys. All the people his entire crew for this cattle drive are children.
Okay.
And he gets killed off sort of, I don't know, 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through the movie. And in the end of the day, it's the children that save the day at the end of that movie. There's definitely a kind of an element of that with the end of the Logan. You can see there's a little nod to that movie.
I feel like while it's not like super prevalent, there is something to be said for a comparison of Logan with the Watchmen.
Interesting,
yeah.
In that a lot of people who I know who like the Watchmen found a lot of similar elements in terms of style in Logan.
I can see in that there. Well, I haven't seen Watchmen.
Oh, you need to. Good movie.
I can see how, given how Logan is also, essentially a deconstruction of the superhero genre, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Because when Alan Moore, now I'm talking about the comic, which I've read bits of, I need to read the whole thing one of these days, did essentially the Watchmen as a dark satire of, the Silver Age, essentially. Logan is essentially a deconstruction of the X-Men franchise in particular, but the comic book movie as a whole, essentially through the lens of a Western.
I mean, I'm looking on the Wikipedia page here. It's quite interesting. It says influence that James Mangold cited, and I already mentioned Shane, the Cowboys, Unforgiven for the Western influences, but there's films like some of them even comedies, but like road movie comedies like Paper Moon and Little Miss Sunshine, even, which is more a tragic comedy, and the interesting one is The Wrestler, the 2008 Mickey Rourke film, which I guess is more playing to the tragedy element, because I don't either of you have seen the movie The Wrestler, but it's a wonderful movie, but it's a heartbreaking movie.
Yeah,
it is an absolutely heartbreaking, which I think is what it was, that element of it. And perhaps as well with the way certain things are filmed and certain aspects of the character of Logan and struggling with if you see The Wrestler, you might now he mentioned it, I was like, yeah, I can see one or two elements where he may have got from that, but
so, and what with the ending being so emotionally moving and bringing people to tears, it wasn't like the eulogy was the setup for it, but the real punch is the very, very end, last shot of the film, where Laura takes the little wooden cross and then turns it on its side before joining the other New Mutants.
That is moving. Where you've got turns it on its side, and then it's not a cross there. There's an X.
Yeah.
Oh, what's going on there, Sam?
What's going on there is I've accidentally pulled my mic out of its stand.
I was going to say there's some real massive background noise going on there. There we go.
Yeah.
Which you get, but again though, that can lead us into we can't show it here, but the Logan post-credit scene, which doesn't exist in the movie, but that's the Deadpool 2 trailer. The one the one I'm on about, where Deadpool goes essentially to Logan's grave, and he's got some of that green serum, and he's just about And he's just about to do it, and then I love the fact that he gets the phone call on his phone, and it's playing the X-Men theme tune, you know, and it's Colossus, but instead of Colossus, it says Ivan Drago. It's I'd love to be able to like share it here, but I know you've been stung for clips before, Ring, so I won't.
But and the green serum was a good device to give us one final Wolverine fight.
Yeah,
it was a MacGuffin that they didn't overuse.
Yeah, I think it was used perfectly, because I think a lot of us, when you went into this film, still kind of thought, if you watch this movie for some time, you're not thinking that Logan's going to die in this movie necessarily, and he's ill and he's sick, but you kind of maybe hope that, hey, maybe this green serums might be what keeps him alive or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
I certainly did first time watching it.
And then you see that big, and then you sort of see that big whole cheer thing when you see the old school. You get that brief moment, Logan going on the rampage, just taking this, kicking the shit out of the bad guys. And then you see how quickly it wears off.
Yeah.
And he's taking it all in one go. And and essentially, Logan essentially does sacrifice himself so that his children can escape.
And and he is killed by the Beast. He is killed by the primal force of bloodlust that he was trying to grow past all his life.
I mean, it was I just want to clarify on what I just said there, that the reason when I was watching this, I didn't think Logan was going to get killed off in this movie. It was just like this movie had, like, half an hour before, had put us through the ringer of, for the second time in this franchise, killing off Professor X.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can't have another one. They've already done this to us. They can't have us kill off. And yet they did. And yet, when you want to watch that movie back, it's like, how did I not see this coming at the end?
I think that part of the reason I didn't expect it was that I kind of viewed Wolverine as the eternal part of the ever-going X-Men franchise.
Yeah. Which I think is part of the reason why they put it in the future, is so that if Fox wanted to make more X-Men movies with Wolverine, they could do it. Because
not that they did ever make more X-Men movies.
No, not that any other X-Men movies were made.
No, just theoretically speaking, it could be done, but yeah.
So it was also the perfect send-off for Hugh Jackman, who at this point was definitely saying that he wanted one last blaze of glory for the character, and then he was done.
I mean, at this point, could you see anyone else? I mean, this is, again, it's like Disney or whoever ever resurrects Wolverine as a character. I mean, who do you get to play it after Hugh Jackman? Because Hugh Jackman is so synonymous with that character now. I
think the problem for me with that is that Deadpool and Wolverine are two of their giants, but at this point, Deadpool is Ryan Reynolds and Wolverine is Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, the irony of it is that part of Wolverine was actually somewhat loosely based on Clint Eastwood in the comic. When the character was written in, there was part of Wolverine's influence. People who wrote Wolverine, the influences were the Man with No Name and Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
And you can even sort of see some of the looks of him when the first time he's got the mask off, that there's a little hint of Clint Eastwood about Wolverine.
Honestly, the way I think they should do it is they should just bring Laura, from that universe, or maybe just have Laura played by the same actor. Yeah, and just have Laura take on the mantle of Wolverine.
I gotta say, sort of a child acting casting, she was awesome.
Yeah.
I think that if the MCU does the whole multiverse thing and did drag Laura into the MCU proper, I think they get away with that.
Yeah.
Especially if they did it as, the kids escape from this world that's horrible to mutants.
Yeah. Daphne Keane is the name of the actress. She's fantastic, and she was absolutely fantastic with that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to say my favorite X-Men. If we're going with main X-Men, it's Nightcrawler. If we're going like more deep lore kind of characters, it's what's his name? Longshot.
See, I think I might sound boring here, but I think Wolverine is my favorite of the X-Men. I know that's boring because a lot of people say, well, there's a reason Wolverine was made like the main character in the X-Men movies because of Wolverine's popularity.
Yeah.
But I think you also that again. Now I mentioned the whole Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry reference. Wolverine was one of the first sort of characters, perhaps in comics, that was. He's one of the early anti-heroes in comics, and you could maybe argue characters like the Punisher as well. But it was kind of one of those first characters that took it to the bad guys the same way the bad guys took it, to other people, to you, sort of. He was that kind of one of the very first to kind of do that.
And thank you, Julie. Disney, if you want to if you like that idea, maybe we can work something out.
I would just say, Walt Disney, if you ever watch Walt Disney, you should be watching Media Musings on a regular basis, because we are giving you the best ideas you can possibly have for future projects.
Yeah.
And
Sam, what about you? Favorite X-Men?
Oh, that's always a really difficult one.
Yeah.
And we're not counting Deadpool, right? We are not counting Deadpool as an X-Men name here.
We're not counting Deadpool. It's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I think that my favorite duo would probably be Storm and Mystique. But my favorite character individually would be Rogue.
Yeah, okay.
I think the way Storm and Mystique fulfill their roles in their respective factions is really interesting and almost a parallel.
Though, I will say one thing about Storm is technically having Storm on any superhero team violates the Geneva Convention.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
actually, I'm gonna have to say, Julie's just said something there. I love Gambit as well. Gambit was
Gambit
so
is
underused in the
excellent.
movies.
Oh yeah.
Gambit should have been
There's
used
so much
way
you could
more in
do
the
with.
movies.
See, I feel like a fun twist on Gambit would simply be because are you guys familiar with Mark Rober?
No.
He's an ex NASA engineer who spends his time building random shits.
Okay.
And he built a card thrower that can like cut through a decent amount of fruit and can like get a decent chunk of the way through an apple even.
Wow.
I feel like Gambit armed with that bastard.
I'm going to say as well, I did say Wolverine and whatever, but another one of my favourites is Beast. I always had a bit of a thing for the Beast.
Yeah. Beast and Colossus are always up there.
Yeah, I'd say my top 3 would probably be Nightcrawler, Gambit, and Beast.
I'd say the one that maybe, and it's weird because I wouldn't have thought I'd like this character, but the one that might surprise you, I kind of like Jubilee.
Okay.
Jubilee's fun.
Okay, then bye.
I want to say I don't quite understand why. I just kind of like Jubilee, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I think Jubilee is literally fun.
Yeah, she's kind of fun. She's kind of fun.
So, final thoughts about Logan.
A fantastic fucking film, even outside of its own context, but in its own context. I think it does right by all of the fucked up shit that preceded it.
Yeah.
Just I hate to use the word masterpiece, but I don't like using that word lightly, but it kind of is.
Well, good thing you're not using it lightly then.
No, I don't like to use that lightly, but I really do think this is a masterpiece. And as I said, for those who have made the argument that this is and I've said this a couple of times throughout the stream, for those that have made the argument that this is the best superhero movie ever made, I cannot begrudge anyone that opinion. Because it's definitely a contender. Even if I don't necessarily know that it is, it's a valid contender, and it's a valid argument to make that this is the best superhero movie ever made. That argument is valid.
And, Kitty Pryde's another good one.
Kitty Pryde is excellent. I'll be honest, Kitty Pryde and honestly, I feel like it's overdone, but Jean Grey.
Jean Grey, it like aside from the Dark Phoenix storyline, Jean Grey's kind of boring.
Fair. I'll be honest, my take on Jean Grey is that her backstory and her powers are fascinating.
Yeah.
She's a Mary Sue.
Yes. My final thoughts on Logan is it was fucking snubbed at the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
It should have gotten at least a nomination.
Maybe I realize where the influence from the movie The Wrestler has come from, because that movie should have won a shit ton of Oscars that it never won. So maybe that's where the influence came from.
And yes, Julie, Logan transcends the usual superhero movie genre, which is why it should have gotten at least a nomination for Best Picture.
It's also why I made the comment about it being good even outside of its own context. Even outside of the superhero movie genre, it's a fucking good film.
Yeah, and like when taken in its its context, it's one of the few superhero movies that comments on the genre without being an ultra dark edgelord parody.
Yeah.
And
hey, Zack Snyder, take notes.
Yeah, take notes, Zach. Take notes, Snyder.
I will say, Zack Snyder, your version of Justice League was way fucking better than the theatrical release. But fuck's sake, take notes.
And with that, I think we'll move to Shilling. Got anything coming up, Sam?
Pub Religion on Wednesday. I was gonna release this Wednesday, but my laptop is dying on me, and it's taken me 2 days to get it to charge.
Oh dear.
So it'll be a bit hit and miss as to when I can upload those. I'm tempted to pre-prepare premieres for the next 3 episodes, just so I don't forget and don't get tech issues. But other than that, I'm planning to try and be around a bit more on Neil streams and shit and B streams. Equally, I'm looking for a job, so we'll see.
Yeah, when you get a job, you find those late night streams are going to be less and less.
Yeah, especially given I'm looking at warehouse work, so that'll be 12-hour shifts for me. Thanks.
Yeah.
And Scummer?
I've got nothing scheduled. I'll be just open with it. I've been a little bit on hold with my channel over the past week or so because, so everyone knows I've had COVID and I'm kind of coming out of that now, and hopefully I'll take a couple more days or something, and I might. But a lot of the time with me, as you know, sometimes something will happen and I'll jump on and talk about it, like a certain, for example, a certain evangelist who got convicted of a crime recently. That sort of thing.
Since the crime is no laughing matter, I won't be breaking out the impression.
No, let's not for this because it's not something to joke about.
Yeah, the crime is a serious matter.
Yeah.
So we will be taking this seriously. As for me, secular D&D should be back on next week. I have no idea what we're going to be doing next week for Media Musings because life has completely screwed the schedule. So something will be decided.
Yes. I have a thought for you after we've finished, by the way, Ring.
Yeah, okay.
Let's have a brainstorming session. We'll have a brainstorming session when we finished, okay?
Yeah, and brain. So let's see. Calendar. So secular D&D on Saturdays. On Sundays, Media Musings. Topics to be announced. And with that, I think we'll move on to taglines. Sam?
Have a day, and remember, communication is key.
And Scummer?
Well, I don't really do taglines, but as we've been talking about Logan, Joey, there's no living with a killing. There's no going back from one. Right or wrong, it's a brand. A brand sticks.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often we forget that.